All right. Whoop. Let's see if this works. Let's have a look. Seems to work. Nice. So it's Tuesday. Over the last few weeks, I was basically building a custom Twitch streaming backend. So what you see here right now is that I tweaked that a little bit. I also adjusted my setup. So I have now a little bit of a green screen setup here to look fancy and all. But what we did over the last few weeks was that I implemented a custom chat background. So you see here that chat messages appear on screen, and there are also a bunch of commands available like TIL for Today I Learned, which shows up a message in the left top corner. So if you're interested in learn more about what is available, you can always type !help, and there's a lot of good stuff available there. So I'm very enjoying that one. Today though, I would like to do something else. So in my spare time, what I usually do is that I work on my own website, which you will find here. And I would like to tweak it a little bit more, and I'm doing that every now and then. It's an Eleventy site, and yeah, I'm a little bit proud of it, but I already figured that I have a CSS bug here, which is unfortunate, but I will fix that later. And but just recently I was on the website of Josh Como. I hope that I say that right. So, well, I have to also say to the Twitter that I'm doing this here right now. So just give me one moment. Let's copy that one. Here we go. Let's, come on. And what I would like to do, so Josh has a very nice website. So it's I think it's mainly built with React, and it's pretty nice. And he has this little thing here, and I'm really digging it. I think it's super nice. So it looks very nice and fancy. And I would like to have, and he has also this beautiful little heart thing here. So I think this is pretty nice, and I would like to have something similar on my side. But the big catch here is that I don't want to bring in a framework or something. I want to do it with custom elements. In case you're not familiar with custom elements, so basically custom elements are this whole web components topic, which we were all very excited about like years ago, but unfortunately they never really took off. So when we have a look, we can have a look for custom elements. And they're basically little components that you can use right in your browser. Browser supports should be pretty straightforward right now. So you see a custom elements, and then you can bring something into your code base without bringing in another framework. And when you follow a little bit of progressive enhancement, you can really treat these kind of things as not necessarily required for your site to work, but for a lot of things, just like beautiful little things that could enrich the experience on your site. So what I would like to have is exactly something like this. So I wouldn't like to have a word count component, but rather I would like to prefer to have like a view counter. And this component then should be counting the views and maybe even likes of a person that interacts with it. And then I would like to bring in a serverless endpoint on Netlify, most probably, that maybe connects to an Airtable database so that we can count views there and that we can have something nice. So a few examples for custom elements out there. So for example, when you look at my site, you can scroll very to the bottom. You see here that there are some performance statistics. So when we open that one up, you will see that this is actually a custom element. So you see that this is a Web Vitals element. So you just drop it in and it will then render certain things. So when we have a look at GitHub on how that works, so we can have a look here. So you can have a custom element that shows web performance metrics by simply dropping in a script that then loads asynchronously. And then you have this component available. So you can go bare bones, which then is basically just showing all the values, but you can also define the values. So I think that I would like to have something like this, but maybe, how should we call it? Maybe stats counter or something that I just drop in and that then counts views of the visitors and also counts kind of likes when someone presses a button and does something like this here. Oh, I reached the max here. Oh, nice. I think this is just beautiful. This is well done, Josh. So how do we do this? So first of all, I'm going to my terminal and I will create a new directory to kick off the code base for that, because I hopefully today will publish the package, write an npm and can use it already. So let's do npm init, and I have a custom initialized package thing. So I'm calling npm init at Stefan Judis. So when I run this, oh, I have to create the directory first, I think. So let's call it take stats counter element. Let's go in there. Here we go. And then let's initialize this repository. So this most likely will, so this now should at least create a new directory. It does an npm install. It creates a GitHub repository. Here we go. So do we want to have a GitHub repository? Yes. We want to have, should this repo be private? No. Stats counter element, a custom element for stats. Here we go. Create a new thing. Yeah. So with this now, this created now a new GitHub repository. It initialized already package.json. It made an initial commit. So when we now go to my GitHub repository here, it should be available already. So when we go here to my repositories, oh man, when you bump up the font sizes in your browser, a lot of things are broken. I have to improve here. So here we see now the stats counter element, and due to my custom setup here, it already created a code of conduct, a README here, package.json is initialized, and I would now open it up in my editor, which is VS Code, and then we can start building a custom element. All right. So let's go here. And how would we do that first? So to write a custom element, what I tend to use first, I sneak peek or I steal some things from an element that is called a YouTube Lite, I think. It's written by Paul Irish. So you see here, Paul Irish, all right. So, and YouTube, Lite YouTube embed, exactly, this is what I'm looking for. So basically I'm using the same element on my site here. So when you go, for example, to the talks section, you will see that there are some talks available. Here we go. And they're also using this custom element for embedding YouTube videos. And why would you use that initially? Well, this now loads a very light preview image and brings all the functionality to lazy load YouTube videos. Because usually when you bring in a YouTube embed, there's a lot of stuff loaded that you don't necessarily need. So let's have a look at what Paul has here. So first of all, he has an index.html, which I'm just shamelessly copy. So let's add a new index.html here. And let's paste this one. Oops, that's not what I want to paste. Wasn't there a copy button? So what we want to do is here, we want to copy this, want to paste this. What do we have here? We have some styling, which I'm going to ignore for now. Then we have an h1. Let's call this, what did we call the repository? Stats counter. Stats counter custom element. Then we will have something like this here. So I'm aiming to have something working that looks exactly like this. Stats counter, which you drop in and which provide all the functionality. Then it loads some JavaScript here, which we will probably need to. So let's create a new file here, which is source stats counter JS. And then there is some more stuff which I'm gonna remove from here now. So to develop this whole thing, let me just clean up. I have some things here on my other screen. Here we go. So to develop the whole thing now, what we have to do is we would have to bring in a server. So, and for these kind of development things, I'm just going to install Live Server, which is a package I use very, very often. So it's really just a basic web server with live reload, which is pretty nice. So when this is installed, we can already go to our package.json in a moment, and then we can set up a npm run dev script. So let's move forward here. So you see here from my little streaming background that the chat boxes, if you type something in the chat or use some custom components with the explanation point, it is actually running a Next.js app in the background, which is currently an overlay over everything that you see. So once this is installed, and I don't want to open the package.json right now because it could be that there's some file conflict, blah, 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 and then I don't want to do that here. So let's go on. Here we go, sweet. So now we can go to the package.json, and what I want to do is that I want to have a dev command. Let's get rid of test. And what we're going to do is live server with dot. So when you have a package available that exposes some binaries, what you can do is that you can use these. So for example, the way this works is that because I installed live server, I now have a bin directory here, and you see here the binary. So when I now go here, I should potentially be able to already do npm run dev. So let's have a look. Sweet. So we see here that we have our headline, and what is the VS Code format? It didn't do the comments right because it's set to nunjucks. So let's do it like this. So with this we have something to, but this should refresh. Okay, so with this we have something, nope, that's not what I want to do. And that's something I want to get rid of too. So with this we now already have our foundation, and when we now should update this, it should refresh on the right side, which it does not do. That is interesting. I'm using this package so often. Okay, well, I'm gonna hit refresh, right? So, and then we can go in here already, and we can say that we don't want to load light YouTube embed, we want to load statscounter.js, which we have not defined yet. So what we're gonna do here is, I'm just gonna copy another file from Mr. Paul Irish. Paul Irish was very present in the developer sphere, like when I started doing development. These days he only appears on the Google stages to share a lot of things about what happens in Chrome. But he was definitely a big part of what happened in my developer progression, let's say. So what we're going to do is we're going to paste this one here, and then we're going to remove some stuff, and we make our way from that one. So you see here, first of all, that custom elements have to extend an HTML element, and then he probably has something like this at the end here. Sweet. So you have the custom elements property available, and then you can define what that element should be, something like this, stats counter, and then you can give it a JavaScript class, and we're gonna call that stats counter too. So I'm gonna now change all this stuff here to stats counter, and now you have a constructor function, which basically happens, or is called, yeah, well, when it's constructed. And then you have several kind of callbacks that are called when the component is initialized. So when this, let me just clean up some things here, because we might use the connected callback. We definitely not prefetch anything here. We also don't warm connections, and we don't do iframe. This looks good to me. So what we could now do here is that we could potentially say, when this is constructed, we could say, for example, this inner HTML equals hello world. And let's remove all the comments here. So when I now go, and I can also get rid of this, Oh man, I should have cleaned up everything here, and we can get rid of this. Here we go. So what we can do now is we can go back to our index.html and we stats counter, and potentially we could have already a hello world here available if I refresh. Nice. So what you see here is that when I have a look at what is going on here is, and I inspect this, here we go. You see that it's a stats counter control, and then it renders this whole thing. So when you talk about custom elements, what a lot of people do is like, you have to use the shadow DOM, which is basically an encapsulated area inside of the web page. So you can do some things that are not necessarily accessible from the outside, but I prefer it to be open because then you can also style things. For example, what we could do here is we could change this and we could say inner HTML equals span. And then what we could do is we could have a style block just on top, and we would still be able to style this from the outside. So we could add a, I cleaned up my VS Code, so there isn't, how is it called? Language, change language mode, that looks good. So let's change that to HTML, and now we can do style. Nope, style, sweet. So what we now could do, for example, is we could just go in there and we can say span, and then we could say color red. And with this should still work. I wonder why this is not refreshing anymore. That is interesting. So let's have a look at the network, if there's something fading initially. There's a 4 or 5 for the fav icon. Can we change that now to yellow? Is that a Firefox thing? So let's open Chrome. Let's see if we have more luck with Chrome. So we're on localhost 8080. And when we do red here, it really looks like the live server is not, do I have something wrong here? Okay, seems to not work anymore. So we're gonna stick with Firefox. And you see here that, oh, did the Viking work? I didn't see it, Madalina. Let's see, does it still work? So Madalina triggered just a custom command, which is Viking. Yeah, seems still to work. So what we're gonna do here right now is, you see, first of all, that when you refresh, that it takes a moment to come in, which is because the JavaScript needs to load. So what I would like to do is, we can stick with this one, but first of all, I would like to connect a click handler to the whole thing. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna add an event listener, which is click, and then let's see if this gives us already something. So what we can do is we can just log it out. Hello world. Here we go. So when this now refreshes, we can click it, and we already see that we have a click handler here available. This is nice. Okay, so how should we do this now? So what I would like to do is, for a statistic, probably we need two things. We need to get the current path, and we need a count. And to have, I'm not very interested in storing the information if you clicked on something, or if someone clicked on something on the server side, because that becomes a little bit complex, because you have to say so users and paths and stuff. So I think what I want to do is that I want to have something like this stats, and we're gonna write things on local storage instead. So what we can do on click is we could say local storage set item, and we call it stats counter, and every time, how do we do this? Let's prototype this. So local storage is a way in the browser to store some data. This is usually persistent, which is really nice. So you can have a look at local storage set item, and then you give it a key, hello, and then you can pass anything in there, and then you should be able to get this back. with something like this. So what we could do here is that we could put in there some JSON. How's Josh doing it? So let's have a look. If he stores some JSON or if he stores several local storage entries. So we can go on Firefox and we can go to local storage, and he see toasty. That's something else, I think. Let's have a look which number goes up here. So let's click it again. Oh no, where's the heart here? Where's the heart? Okay, so he has two things. Okay, so he has the hit counter, but I'm interested in the little heart here right now. So where is it? So here we go. So I wonder where he has this information. So let's have a look in the local storage. He seems to persist this on disk, which, should we do this? Yeah. Maybe let's just get the current path and then use this as a key for local storage. So what we could do is here, we could prototype this. So let's go to here and we can say, I don't know, window, location. Do we have a path available, path name? That looks good. So we could set this as a key, and then we could set it to a number. Let's say we do this. So when we now have our custom element here, what we can do is we can refresh this. So let's do it like this again. We can refresh this and then we can click it. And it should now, when we go to our storage, we should see here a local storage entry that has window location path name, because it shouldn't be a string. Okay, so let's refresh that here. So what we can do now is we can click that and we see here, all right, that's cool. So what we then would have to do is, let's just say something like this, stats equals, and then when the element initializes, what we're going to do is that we access an item there, get item, and then we do window location path name. And we're going to try to parse some JSON here. So let's bring it into a try catch. So if you're doing JSON parse, this throws very badly, so you don't want to do this. So let's do this stats equals empty object here. And we're going to try to JSON parse something that is in there. So you're going to do this. And then in the event listener, we should probably, let's make a note here, because currently it's an empty element, and we should probably make that as accessible later. So let's do it like this. And then if someone clicks on it, first of all, we want to increase a counter here. So let's have a look at if this stats actually works here. So this stats, so we should now, when someone clicks this, we should see an JSON object in the console here, which we don't. This stats, it looks like it's still stuck, so let's have a look. 5. Oh, we're overriding it right away. Did we see an object initially on the first click? No, we don't. Window look path name. Okay, but then let's just destructure this. So we're gonna go with views, and we're gonna go with likes here. And we destructure this from this stats, and then we're gonna give this a default parameter, which is 1, and likes is 0, and no, let's just do it like this. So we're gonna grab stats here. Here we go, stats, and then on click we're gonna do stats likes plus plus, and then we, as a set item, we do JSON stringify stats. All right, so let's have a look what happens now. So when we now refresh this whole thing, no errors coming up. Can't assign property likes on, not an object. So let's have a look what is going on here. So we're gonna save that for a second. So we're gonna do this. We're gonna click it, which should kick off the debugger here. All right. When we go in here, let's see what this stats is. Which is 5. Okay, I think we're in a I think we're in a weird state here because we set the 5 first. So let's clear up the storage for a moment, like this one. And let's run this again. I'm gonna remove the debugger. I'm gonna refresh here. Come on, yeah. Here we go. So with this, stats is null. So this logic doesn't work. So what we have to do here is, so this line obviously is not throwing, it is returning null. Is that right? Yeah. All right, let's untangle this a little bit. Let's say const local storage starts equals this, and this should be undefined by default now. Here we go. That's also null. Okay. So if local storage starts, try to parse it. You know what? Let's do it like this. This state equals empty object. Then we grab the stats, and if there's something available, then we gonna try to parse that, assign it, and if it throws, basically nothing has to happen. So let's have a look now. So when we go here now, is that when we click this one now, stats is undefined. Where's this coming from? 21. This stats. All right, let's have a look what's going on. Here we go. And when we go in here, how can that be? Oh, it's called stats, not state. Here we go. Okay, so let's give that another try. Gonna save that, refresh, here we go. And now with this, all right, we don't have an error anymore. And when we go to the applications, to the storage thing here, we should see that this is this, and then we do stats likes equal, oh, this logic is not very nice. So how do we do this? I just want to, let's give it a default state here. I think that makes sense. Let's do views equals 1 and likes equals 0. So and now this logic should actually work. I'm gonna clear this path here. I'm gonna refresh. And now what we're gonna do is when I click it, sweet. So with this, we already have some logic available. So what we can now do is I'm gonna bring in a, just let's call it a render function. And I'm not bringing too heavy logic in here. So we're just bringing in this one. And then we can change that to template literals, and we can say this stats likes. And with this, we should already have a little counting component here after we call this render here. And we also call this render here. So we now refresh the whole thing. Here we go. It shows 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Okay, sweet. So with this, we already have a little like counter that should work potentially across path names. So we have stored it in local storage with the current path name in this page. So what we can do now here is, let's just do something like this, likes. And then we could bring in something super nice here. Sweet. But probably what we don't want to have is, let's have a look at the accessibility tooling in Firefox actually. So when we inspect this thing, so where's the accessibility tooling here? All right. Can I do this? Yeah, it looks like it. So it has, what is it? It's a text leaf. Bad color contrast here. So that is not great. But the most important thing here is that it is clickable, but people with assistive technology probably don't know that it's clickable. So what we probably should have is, let's clean up this template a little bit, so that we have here a button type button, and we're gonna call it increase. Let's go with like it, and we're gonna close it. And then we can go here, instead of this add event listener, we can do this query selector button, because we're in this element here, add event listener. Also looks like my prettier config is not really working here today, which is weird, to be honest. Okay. So with this now, we should have here a button. No button. This query selector is null. Because probably we want to do all this stuff inside of the connected callback. So as far as I understood, the connected callback is when all this stuff is rendered to the DOM, and it should be called right away. So we can do connected here. So let's have a look. So we haven't connected. And this query selector is still null, because we have to call render. Maybe it worked before. We have to call render right before we want to touch the event listener. Here we go. Sweet. So now we have already, it only works once. That doesn't make sense. This render. All right. So let's go back to the storage and see if we have a major error, or if it's just not displaying things. So when we go to the storage, you see that it has 30 likes. Okay, so let's clear that one up. Do a refresh, 0 likes, 1. It only works once. Okay. If I had lunch today, I had a sandwich from the bakery actually. So why is that not working any further? So let's have a look if this click handler still works, because it works once. So thank you. So when we click this one, it's only registering the, here we go. So after re-rendering, we lose the click handler. That is, So let's stick with the component here, and let's do it like this. This should still work. Yeah, nice. So we now have already a custom web component that reacts to clicks, and should now be a little bit more accessible, because we now have a proper button which is announced to be clickable, and that should be then already a little bit better. So when we look here, it should we should see that it is a button here. Sweet. So what we're gonna do now is, we could already potentially clean that up. And I'm not discussing my food here further from a lunch. And then maybe get already a view counter running. So how would we do that? What we could do is that we could bring in our index HTML, and the way that we could do that, probably something like a endpoint, something like this, that then fetches maybe additional information from a server. So what we could do is we could bring in, for example, like HTTPS something here, stats.com or whatever, and then we could make a request there to show the view counter too. So what we could do is we could then build that up. Is that good enough already? Should we move that with us? It's actually not that great yet, because I can also click on the likes and it's increasing the counter here. So let's change it a little bit, and what we can do is we can go in here, we can grab the event, and we can say if event target, I think it's tag name equals button, then we only want to count up. So let's move this one in here. We're gonna refresh that one, and now this shouldn't do anything anymore, but whoops. Let's have a look if this is actually correct. Let's do eTarget deep clone deep nested objects. I think the quickest way that I would think of is probably JSON stringify, JSON parse. So you could have, let's have a look here. So what we could do is we could have an object which is A, B, C, D. Oh, one too much, like that. A, B, here we're missing one. Here we go. Still one too much? What? What you could do though is you could do JSON stringify, and then, no, the other way around. You could do JSON parse and then JSON stringify, and this is usually a cheap way to deeply nested object. So I did that a few times in the past, so that works quite well. So what we can do then is we have a look at the click target here, and we can see, wasn't it tag name? Or I'm not into source element. Somewhere in here should be, what are we looking at? Okay, so I want to have eTarget because I want to check if it's a real button. So let's click that one again. Okay, let's grab it like this. So I can select the element in DevTools, and I can do $0. Now we could see it's tag name with a capital N. Here we go. So with this, probably we should be back on track, and we now have a little like counter that stores everything in local storage, which I think is already pretty nice. So let's bring that one in, and I could style that potentially a little bit later, but I think the fun part is to build a function here that is actually a view counter. And the way that I thought of doing this is bringing in Airtable as a cheap database. So let me, in case you're not familiar with it, so Airtable is basically like a Google spreadsheet, but with a nice API. So what we could do is we could set up an Airtable database that then has a path and a counter, and then rewrite a serverless function that hides the API key, because usually you don't want to do that from the client, because then people could randomly write to your database. So what we could do is let's create this one. So we can go here, and I want to start from scratch. So I bumped the font size of Firefox here, and a lot of things are struggling with these font settings, as you see. So let's have a look. Let's make that a little bigger then again. So what I want to do is let's go in here. Is it double click? Yeah. So this, yeah, welcome. I am not into onboarding right now. Go away, go away. Yeah. So let's call that stats counter. What we probably want to do here is a path. And then what we want to have here is count, maybe. And it shouldn't be long text. This one should be a number. Here we go. Integer, allow negative numbers. Nope. Save that one. And we have a path, which should be a string. How did I do that? Single line, that works. And then we can get rid of these here. Let's delete that one. And let's delete this one. Cool. So with this, the way that I see this, that it could be then, okay, we have a path here, and then we have a number, and whenever then someone calls the URL that we pass to our component, it would then fetch this data and would render it inside of the component. So with this, I have to switch projects. So let's go back here and let's split that up, and I'm just going to go to my private website here. Here we go. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that one up, and I'm going to define a Netlify function that we are using for this. So let's close everything up here. I should have already a functions directory, which we have here. So what I want to do here is I want to create a new file, which is stats counter, and then we're gonna go with stats counter JS. And let's have a look at how the structure should be inside of a Netlify function. So it is exports handler something something. Here we go. Let's close this one, and I assume the return value should be something like this. So when we add this one now, we in theory have already a serverless function. And what we could do here is that we now could run netlify dev, and we should have an endpoint available on my local machine that we can use as a serverless function, which can be easily deployed to the cloud. Well, that works great. Let me make that a little smaller here, because that's too hard for me to read here. Let's do it like this. Here we go. So what's the problem? Request to not found. What? Netlify. Whoops. Does it have something like, yeah, let's have a look. Netlify status, and I hope that it's not showing a lot of credentials at some point here, because I would. Not found. What's happening? Netlify. What is it? Link. Link. Let's see if that does the trick. Site already linked. Yep. Netlify dev. Here we go. All right, so this now starts a development server. It kicks off 11t and such. But the thing that I'm actually interested in is the serverless endpoint that it will also start, hopefully in a few seconds. Come on. So the cool thing about Netlify Dev is that it spins up everything. It's pretty smart. It detects what functions or what framework or whatever you're using. And then it spins up a function server. So we see here now my local version of the site, which I'm actually really not interested in. What I'm interested in is the serverless endpoint that we just created. So I can now potentially go to localhost and we can do .netlify and then stats counter and then stats counter.js or just stats counter or stats counter. Well, that's unfortunate. So let's have a look. How did we call it? Stats counter. And we should probably see in, do we see which functions are available somewhere in the log? Let's see if it's refreshing when I'm doing something here. Stats counter. Okay, so let's find out on Netlify serverless function what the actual URL is. Maybe do I need functions, the keyword in the URL? I think it needs the keyword. So let's have a look. Netlify functions overview. Oh, I would like it to go to the docs and not to a marketing site here. This is what we have. We have my functions, hello. Aha. Okay, so we're missing a functions here. So it is .netlify.functions, and then stats counter. Sweet. So with this, I now have already a serverless function running, which we have here. So what we can do here is probably do hello. This should all refresh and sweet. So what we can now do from this function is we could potentially connect that already with my little custom component. So let's say that we want to grab this one and I'm gonna paste this into the other thing. So we're gonna go here. Let's maybe not call that endpoint, but let's maybe call that stats URL. Yeah, I think I like that. So, and then we can go into our component and on connected, what we could do is, so how do we do this? We can definitely do window.fetch. Let's see if we have this attribute available. So let's do console log this here. So when we go to our component, we can, oops, no, that's actually it. So we can clean up a few things here. Let's get rid of this one, this one, this one. So when we now open up the console here, we should, nope, that's not it. This is it. Nope, that's not it either. Oh, I think I have a conflict around ports here, don't I? So this is localhost 8080. Gotcha. Is that smart enough to pick another port? Okay, we got a very beautifully looking port here right now. Okay, nice. So what we can do here now is we should see some stuff. We see the stats counter element, which is not very helpful because it's printing out the element. So let's see if we can inspect this and see what we get. So we have, go away. We could potentially do now $0 and then get attribute stats URL. Nice. So with this, we have access to the thing outside. This stats URL equals this get attribute. If not this stats URL, throw new error. Please define stats URL attribute. Okay. So what? Am I not defining this? Okay, we can get rid of this one. So when we go here, use stats URL. So it seems like that this is not available at that moment in time. Hello, thanks for joining. How are you? So it seems like that this is not available in the constructor. So let's have a look here, constructor. And let's gonna paste this one in, and I assume that this is, oh, look at this. The live reload is now working. I'm good. I'm doing some evening chill coding. Thanks for asking. That is odd. That it is throwing this error, because we see it being logged here that it is available, but huh? Do I have a typo here? Why is this on the? Let's have a look at this. Yeah, right. So when this is not defined, when no one is passing in the stats URL, then we are just going to throw an error. So then in the connected callback, what we could do is, let's define another function here, which is fetch data. And we're gonna call this one here too, this fetch data. And then we what's funky? Anything specific? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna do window.fetch. What did I call it? I called it this stats URL. This stats URL. And when you're dealing with window.fetch, everything is promises based. So let's just make this an async function, so that we can do const response await window.fetch this stats URL, and then we do const data response JSON to parse this whole thing. We have to await that too, and then we can do, let's have a look here at the data object. But for that, well, Java and JavaScript are two completely different. JavaScript is probably a little wild due to its flexible nature, but we're writing some web components here. So basically, my goal here for today is that we have a little custom element here. So when you look at the DevTools here to the right, you see that I already have a stats counter element that already does some counting. This is persisted in local storage currently, and what I'm currently adding is that there is a URL that fetches some data, so that it could also be like a view counter. So what I would like to do is something like a combination that is, for example, on this website. You see the website from Josh Comeau. He has this, or is it gone again? So first of all, he has this view counter, which I think is just funny, and he has also this little thing here. So I would like to have the same, but all I really want to do is drop in one element, no framework, nothing else, and this is the game plan here. So what we want to do is we want to fetch the data, and then when this is done, we are currently logging out the data. So to make that work, what we have to do is we have to return some data from our serverless function that we have. So we're gonna do JSON stringify here, and then we're gonna do, what did we call it, count? Let's have a look. We said that the data object is views and likes. So let's return views 0 and likes. Likes we don't care about, because likes we're only gonna have in the client. So the only thing that we care about is actually views. So with this, when we look at the local environment here, we see that, all right, this is already returning an object in JSON, which is views. So when we now go into our element, this should fetch already and connect to this endpoint. It should parse the JSON and hopefully we see something. We see something there. And here we already, okay, what do we do this? Then plain text document was not declared. The document will render with global text. Do we have to define a content type in our function? Status code, and let's do content type maybe? Application JSON, do we have to do that? Let's see what happens now. That doesn't look correct. So let's have a look at the network panel, what actually happens. So here we have the call to our function. So when we look at the I'm shipping a lot of CSP headers, so maybe this is fighting back at some point. But we have here the request response. It looks like that it should have application JSON. So let's have a look at Netlify function application JSON. So let's have a look here. And what do we got? There's a content type. I'm just looking at a function. Come on. Want to see a function. Oh boy. Event handler, status code 200. That's pretty much what we have here. So let's have a look. Here we have the function. What is this? Where is this actually coming from? So when we look at the response for this call, what we do see is the response headers are not... This is pretty much what we do. We're not using the callbacks context here. We're just going with the return because it's an async function, but that already works. So I'm a little bit puzzled what, could show me the console, what that actually means. The character encoding of the plain document was not declared. The document will render with gobble text and some browser content. The character encoding, I don't know, Netlify function character encoding. So let's have a look. Does it still work though? Sleep tight, man. Thanks for dropping by. Cool, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a network. We see the request going here, and we see the response, which seems to be working fine. Niels, hello again. Thanks for dropping in. So I'm not working on the streaming setup today. I'm doing some custom element stuff. So it looks like, first of all, here you see that I have my my CSP is actually preventing the call to the serverless functions that I have running locally. So let's have a look at my headers config. So I use quite a little bit of a CSP thing, and for local development, what we do now is what we're gonna do is access. What is this? Is this connect? Let's open that in Chrome. I think in Chrome the message is a little nicer, telling me where I have to add CSP stuff actually. So let's have a look here. So when we open that one, Access to fetch at from origin has been blocked by course policy. Header is present on the request resource. Or is it? Or is the other one a course problem too? That is interesting. So I am on. Oh, But is this? Why do I run into CSP errors here? Oh, no, it's not CSP, it's course. Right, of course. So I assume that when we go into the function that we should define Netlify function headers. Let's see if we can set, let's see what you got there. Let's open that. Here we go. CSS target. What do I see here, Niels? Is that all custom elements? Is that generated or did you write that by hand? Triangles, triangles. Here, Stargate, and what is DHD? DHD. I see. So it's Stargate and DHD. Probably I just don't have the knowledge here. Yeah, nice. Oh, I can dial stuff. What do I have to do here? Can I? Okay, I can click things, but I'm not really. Oh. Nice one. Fancy. Cool. All right, so back to topic. Let's see if we succeed here with the custom elements today. So first, I'm running into some course problems here, because when we look at my element here, it tries to access some data which runs custom elements count. So what I want to do is I'm on this port, and then I want to basically switch ports from 58267 to localhost 8888, which means that I have to Netlify function course headers. So just for development, let's set up course headers, and then hopefully it's headers. That looks already good to me. So let's define a headers object here in my function code, and let's drop this one in. Let's paste that one. All right, so with this, hopefully when we go back here, we should be nice. Is that already now coming from the custom element? So this is coming from line 45, which has 0 views. Sweet. All right, so with this, what we could do is that we could go into the serverless function, which we have here, and we could bring in show views from Airtable. Yeah, that's pretty nice. So what we can do here now is we have a view counter already that persists stuff in local storage, all as a custom element here. So you could potentially drop that in and it just works. And then we're gonna have very soon, so let's prepare that already. We have then something that is like views, which we have this stats views, which should now be 0, I assume. Oh, it's 1, because I'm currently setting some default data here. But nice. All right, so how do we bring Airtable? I decided to go with Airtable, so let's have a look at this. So when we go to, let's clean up some stuff here. So we don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. We don't need this anymore. And this is our function endpoint, which works. Cool. And this is local environment, which we also don't need. Let's keep the function endpoint. Probably I want to debug that later. So when we now go to Airtable, I already prepared a a table, which we also call studs. And this will have a path, and let's not call it count. Let's maybe call it view count to be just very explicit here. And now what happens when someone hits the serverless function, I want to do a few things. So first of all, I want to establish connection to Airtable, get the path. I wonder if we should have this as a query param, maybe, and then update Airtable and respond. Sweet. I think that is doable. So let's have a look at Airtable API docs. Here we go. I think they also have a fairly straightforward, yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that when documentation does that. So they figured out that I'm currently logged in, and I'm pretty sure that it now has. Hopefully, it doesn't show my API key. Nice. That is so nice. So that it's not showing my API key right now. So that is cool. Well done, Airtable. So what do we want to do is, I want to have a look at a JavaScript thing. Okay. So what do we see here? We see that we should have an Airtable API key available. Let's make that a little bigger and let's move that to the left. Okay. So it wants that we define a base, then we okay, so basically this is what we want to do. So the base I assume is the URL of our table here. So let's have a look, which is TBLEU. Nope. What is that opening here? Well, it's opening the right things. Oh, I want to go away. I want that. Go away. Yeah, I got it. Nope. Not into that. Okay. So it's telling us that we should get a base. I assume, I don't know what this base is, but let's find out. So and then we have base stats. List each page. Okay, so I think we should start with this. And to make that work, first of all, we have to have a look on how to bring in the dependency with the function setup. So I assume in here, we just install it inside of this project. Okay, let's do this. So we have here npm install --save Airtable. And then we can copy a whole bunch of this here. So we're gonna grab that one. We're gonna go const API key will be process env Airtable key, and I'm gonna add that in a moment off screen. And then we're gonna base studs each page. List records and stats use the select method. I think I just want to have one. Oh no. Yeah, I think we have to list these first. I think that's how we have to do it. Well, then let's bring this one in. And let's see what we're going to do with this. Selecting the first 3 records in grid view. What is the grid view? Why do I need a grid view? I only want... Well, okay. It looks like that's Okay. View max records. How many can we fetch? Yeah, let's find out then. So then we do console log, this whole thing. Let's clean this up. There's a lot of things happening here. Let's drop this line. And then we have a done handler. Okay. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do fetch Airtable data, and to not have all that stuff in my function here. So let's move this one in. We can keep these there. Yeah, that works, but then we can move these in. Let's format that. So it does fetches some data. And I think that's good enough for now. Maybe we already see some logging. So we're going to do wait, fetch Airtable data. And now I have to move this off stream for a moment because I'm dealing with the API key. So give me just a moment. So I'm showing the API key in my docs here. Here we go. And the cool thing about Netlify Dev is that when you use Netlify Dev, you can set the environment variables in production, and then when you run Netlify Dev, is that it will pull these in. This is extremely convenient, I have to say. So where are the environment variables? Environment. Here we go. Let's call it Airtable token instead. Okay. Edit variables, new variable, Airtable token. Let's paste this one here. Do I have to save that? Yeah, save that. I'm gonna close that one again. And I'm gonna hide the API key again. Okay. So here we go. So theoretically, when I now go to my terminal and I do Netlify Dev, and I change the name of this to Airtable token, we should be able to run Netlify Dev, and it should pull in the key so that we can just continue working on that, which I think would be very nice. Is it in there? Is it not? Feedly token, Netlify, screencast. It does not look like it is. Okay, let me do that again. app.netlify.com. Let's have a look. Oh, I bumped the font sizes of Firefox. Everything looks terrible. Oh my god. Nope, I don't want to do that. Build and deploy settings, which you don't see, but that is all right. We're going to go to environment. Airtable token. Do I have to deploy first? Is that a thing? Let's see, deploys. Trigger a new deploy. Okay, let's see if this resolves something. So these seem to be, no, they are not in order. Okay. So you might have heard that I'm using a little tool that I wrote myself. It's an Electron app. So this kind of notifies me when something is happening, and then triggered a new build in Netlify. So I can always have notifications about build things. So if you're interested in learning more about this, and if you're a Netlify user, what you can do is you can do just Netlify menu bar. This is something that I didn't touch in a while because it completely helps me out with the things that I want to do. But if you want to have something here for your Netlify usage, I'm up for PRs or collaboration or something. So far, so good. So let's see when this resolves. So usually a deploy from my side takes a minute. I don't know why this took longer here, to be honest. So let's see when this resolves. All right, we're on uploading, and now here we go. So theoretically, let's see if we need to deploy to pull in all the environment variables. Wouldn't make much sense though, does it? Oh, it is here. But I'm looking at the message of the tokens that are overridden. Okay, so we have the Airtable token available, which means when we have now do something like, and I'm not gonna log it out, but I'm just gonna do process and Airtable token slice. No, I'm not gonna do it. It really will be there. So what we theoretically should see that we get some messages in our console here whenever we call the functions endpoint. So when we can get rid of this one and we can open the functions again. Where is the function? Here we have the function. Let's put that to the left. Let's see what happens. Nice. All right. So what do we got here? What are we actually looking at? So it is iterating over 3 items, which we have here. So let's just do another path here, which we call today I learned. And then can we, how do I delete a row? Okay, so like this. So when we now hit it again, let's do it like this. Then we should see only 2. Nice. Okay, so it's logging out record get path. And what we want to do is we want to go log both, which record get, what did we call it? I don't remember. We called it view count. Get view count. So with this, we get the data out. So how would we move forward? I would like actually just to filter for something so that I don't have to iterate over everything. Can we just, you can use to filter, sort, and format the result. Well, that looks exactly what I want to do. So fields, only data for fields whose name are in this list. Fields whose names. Okay, that's not what I want to do. A formula that's used to filter records. The formula will be evaluated for each record, and if the result is 0, page size sort, I don't care. View, I don't care. Time zone, I don't care. User local. Okay. So filter by formula. Well, that is great. Let's have a look what this formula is. So when we go here, text operators, functions. Let's make that a little bigger. Let's find the thing. Can't I say just say okay, so we're looking at this filter by formula, not to only include records where path isn't empty. All right, let's give that a try. So let's see what happens. So we're gonna go here, we're gonna pass that as a parameter, and what we want to do is, let's say we want to do path equal today I learned. Then each page, it should only be 1. Records, that should only be 1. We probably don't need fetch next page here because there should only be 1 record. All right, and then let's see what happens now. So when we go to this one, we can open. That actually looks good, doesn't it? So counter value is undefined. So when we add, yeah, 1, 2, 3, so we can now hit the function again, and we could 1. Does it take a little to sync? Yeah, it does. It does take a little. Okay. So what do we got here? So we have now, we have a callback driven thing going. Okay, let's promisify this first. So but we actually don't have to promise it. Oh, we do. Okay, so return new promise. This accepts a callback. This callback includes resolve and reject. And then we can move this stuff in here. So then what we want to do. So if we have an error, then we want to do return reject error. And I'm not a fan of error, so let's go with error. That is, so I have each page. How's this? Okay, I think we can just drop, what is that? So we have here first page. Okay, we're gonna switch to this because I think that makes more sense. First page, which is called with error and records. Yeah, that makes sense. That is a little bit friendlier here. So this is called with error and records. And then we can move this one up here. And then let's see if this still works. So I'm gonna drop this stuff here. Yep, so that looks nice. If error reject. Okay, let's see if it still works first. Okay, so when I'm now going to the function again, let's call that one. I'm gonna see. So this seems still to work. So what we can do is, if, how do we do this? We do if record length equals 0, what do we do then? So then there's no entry. It's not an error though, so we're gonna do resolve views 0. Otherwise, we do resolve views, and then we get the view count here. So what we do now is that const record. So we fetch now the data, we get it in our function, and theoretically we have it here. And what we would have to do now is to get the URL from a query param, I guess. Param. So let's have a look at the event 2 here. So when we now do, whoops, something is throwing off. What is happening? Cannot read offset. Well, that's not very helpful here. Okay, let's start that again. Okay. And we're gonna... No, I don't want to do that, thank you. Okay, it looks like I broke something fundamental here. So what do we do? This is not helpful. This is cannot read property of undefined. Offset of undefined. Okay. So what did we do? It was already working, wasn't it? Aha. Okay, let's try that another one. So records for each, resolve, record get. That looks good to me. So when we go here, nice. Okay, so it was a little typo as always. So now let's change this and append a query parameter, which we do URL. No, let's call it path, and then we do today I learned. So let's see what we got. So theoretically, let's clean this one up. Let's make the request again. How do we get that out? Query string parameters. Well done. Nice. I love that. So let's do const path. Oh, I love that. We can grab that directly from event query string parameters. If not path, let's exit this early in case something is there. If not path, return status code. What would be the status code for something like this? Body, please define path query variable. Sweet. So with this now, let's have a look. HTTP status codes. Yeah, let's do it like this. What should it be? Forbidden is not right. Bad request does it. Okay. So then what we would have to do is we would grab the path, we would bring that path in here, which comes out here, and then we can make this a template string, and we pass this body here, which now means that we should get the right record back with the right path. All right. Progress. So let's have a look. So when we clean this one up here, we do this. Bottoms. Cannot read property parameters. What is happening? Cannot read parameters of undefined in counter 35. Another typo. Okay, let's try that one again. Let's clear that one up. And then we're gonna do this. Yeah, nice. Looks good. That is cool. So we have a status 200 here now, and we see the data that we're interested in. So let's rename that in path studs, maybe. And we rename this function in fetch path studs. Should we fetch and update in the same run? Should we do that? Then we could do fetch and update. Because otherwise, so it's two API calls anyways, right? But what we could do now is we could say path stats views plus plus, and then we say, oh, we could actually do this. Await update path stats path stat. Oh, that's, I'm not sure if I like that. Path stats views plus plus. Then yeah, let's keep it for now like this. So let's write another function here, which is like async function. What was it? Update path stats. And here we go. We have stats. And this probably should now also return the, what did we call it? We called it an Airtable. Called it path. Whoops. So what we're going to do is path we don't have to fetch that from the record because we have the path available, so we can do the short route here, which is nice. So we're going to do path here too. And then we count that up, and then we update the whole thing. So which means that we do go to the Airtable docs again. So what do we got? How do we update things? We go here and we say, so we can update or create. Does that? Oh, I feel like that could be done in just one function somehow. Shouldn't we just get, no, maybe not. So but we could create a record when there is none. I think that we could do that. We could do that here. Yeah. So let's see if we can make this. If not length, then we're gonna do base. Okay, let's change that. Let's call base Airtable base, and we do this, and we do this, and then we can do reuse this one because I want to do here if records length equals 0, then we do Airtable base create. Yep. And then we create a single field, which is path. Oh, I love that this is pre-filled. Oh, that is super nice. That is super cool. So path is path, view count is 0. We're not gonna do more than that. Like this. And this accepts a callback now, I assume. Yeah. So this accepts a callback, which again is function with error. What else is in there? Records. Like this. And if oh man, I haven't written callback code for quite a long time. Return, reject, cool. And otherwise we do exactly the thing with path and view counts. Okay, maybe that works. So when we now go back, we can have a look at this one. Where is record is not defined in 71. 71, okay. So let's fix this one here. So 71. Sweet, so let's do that. So this now does exactly nothing, but when I change the URL here, it should maybe create a new entry in Airtable. Sweet. All right, and then what we do is we count up the view and then we go back to our stats thing here, and then we can be sure that we can update, which means that we can do, oh, let's move that one out because I need it in 2 functions now. Whoops. Let's move that one here. And we want to do base stats. Oh, it needs an ID. Where do I get the ID from? Record get ID, okay. So let's clean that one up. So what we want to do is for everything here, we do okay, so let's do records 0. What is it? Get ID. Yeah, so let's grab the record here. Let's give this one an ID. We shouldn't also not iterate over this one. Okay, let's clean some things up here. So that got very messy in the meantime. So let's do so we don't need a loop here. So basically what we only need here is also record 0. So then we can drop a loop, and then we can do also record 0 get ID. I wonder how we could make that cleaner here. Okay, but let's stick with that for a moment, and then we want to, here in stats, what we get is ID, views, and path, so that we now could potentially go, where are the Airtable docs? Update records, okay. So here we do base stats update. I'm gonna go with the callbacks for now, but I think I'm gonna clean this up and make that promises based like really soon. So let's return new promise, resolve, reject. Let's go in here. So what we want to do here is we want to use the base, which is already Airtable base. So that works. So ID is ID, path is path, view count is views, if error, return, reject, error, and we want to do error, and then otherwise just resolve. I don't need anything more there. Sweet. So let's drop this one here. Okay, so when we drop this, we can now update path stats. That should be done, and then we should be able to do here JSON stringify just path stats. Should we maybe just call that stats? Yeah, let's go with stats. 1, 2, stats, sweet. So maybe, just maybe, oh, that's not what I'm looking at. So we have bottoms. So what are we getting into here? Airtable. Okay, let's have a look at the thing again. If I wrote something wrong in the function code here, so this serverless function is supposed to write some data to Airtable and be a little stats counter, and please stop opening that here. So let's have a look. So we have stats which fetches stats from a certain path, and this is not beautiful, but yeah, callback stuff is happening. So then we have views, return new read promise. We want to update this whole thing. Let's lock this part out here first. ID, views, path. And then we have the view count, we have the path. If there's an error, reject. And then we have stats here, await, wedge, fetch stuff. Increase the counter, and then update path stats, which I assume is the right name here. And then we return thing with stats. So that looks pretty okay to me. So let's see what happens when we call the function. It is blowing off in Airtable itself. Okay, so let's restart that one. So what if we have a look at what stats are here? Okay, so we have stats here. Stop opening that. Well, it looks like I broke the first function already. Fetch path stats. So let's make this a little smaller here. So what do we got? We have a path, we have the Airtable base, which we have here. We have the path from the top, we have view count. It's also very unfortunate that it's blowing up that badly, like really crashing. So what's the error? There's also no real thing here. I'll make that a little smaller. It's a little bit too big for my taste. Okay. Okay. Time for some serious. So I assume really that I broke the fetch function here. So let's bring in this here. And afterwards, we can really debug what is going on there. So let's get rid of this. Let's make another request. Right. So we see that we're right before the function blows off. What we want to do is that close. Record length, field path, resolve path, views, records. Is it the ID part that I added? Is it this? Otherwise, I didn't have many changes here, to be honest. Let's have a look at how do you get an ID again? Wasn't it get ID? Record get ID. Yep, that looks pretty okay to me. All right, next try here. Let's clean up the terminal. Let's refresh the function. No, it's not the ID. Oops. What is going on? Oh, we had that working already. Airtable create. I really don't know what to do with this error, to be honest. This is not very helpful. Okay. Fields. Ah. Okay, we're not returning. It's trying to access this. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's move that one in here. That makes sense. And then we can still do here ID equals records 0 get ID. All right, so let's kick that one off. And then we're close. I'm pretty sure we're close. All right. So let's do this. No? Same error, same error. Ah. No, that actually makes sense. Okay, very. I'm not sure how to attach a debugger in Netlify Dev, so we're going very hello 1, hello 2, hello 3, and we're gonna go here with hello 4. Oh man, that's very bad what I'm doing here. It's records, isn't it? Here we go. Typo king in action. All right, so come on. That looks good. So it's returning the ID, which I'm gonna have a typo somewhere. So somewhere is just view written instead of views. View count, views, view. Okay, so we have the tutorial launcher, we have 0 views. We have an ID. We don't want to return the ID first of all, so let's do path. Let's destructure that here. So we're going to do const path views equals stats, and then we can do path views like this. Okay, let's see. What the? Syntax error. Identify path is already defined. Yeah, let's just grab the views then, because we know the path. So with this now we have a function here, hopefully, come on. View 0, view 0. Great job, Stefan. You did a counter that does not count. That is great. Stats views. Here is where it's coming from. Okay. So views 1, 2, 3. And now when we do this, 124, 125. Nice. And when we now add a completely random URL, views 1. Sweet. So when we now go to Airtable, I think this is one for my command here. Let's do celebrate. Nice. So for this now, what we can do is we have here the rows. Everything works fine. This is great. And when we now go back and switch the code base to our custom element, what we have now is we have the URL of the thing that we want to deal with, which is this. Did we set that in the index.html? So we can go here. We can drop this. Yep. And then when we make the request, which we have here, we're gonna do this.url like this. And then we do path equal window location, or is it path name? Path name. And I have to close the template string here like this. And we have the data, and hopefully, maybe, we now see in our custom element here we go. So this now shows 6 and this now shows 7. Here we go. Nice. What we now have is a custom element that is a stats counter that accepts the stats URL, which we wrote as a Netlify function, which is not deployed yet, but it's running on my local machine. And what we can do now is that we have the data available. So we can go here and we say, what do we get out here? Views. We have views here, and when with this, let's do it like this. So we have a render function for our custom element. And thanks, Niels. Yeah, now we're close. Now we're close. And what we can now do is let's just destructure this and views and likes. Then we can clean things a little bit up here. So how often do we call render? Here we call let's not do it like this. Let's grab these from this stats like this, and then we can do this stats views equal views, and we call this render here. And when we now, is that it? Let's see. So when we go here now, we have 10 views, 12 views. Nice, so that seems to work. Let's give views a null value first because it has to fetch, and then we can bring in views. If not views, views equals null, then we do ... and otherwise we do views. All right, let's refresh that one. That worked great, Stefan. Oh boy. Where's the one coming from? We have views, 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 views. What? Oh, it's coming from the local storage, huh? Should we have the views and local storage like at all? Yeah, I think we can drop the views from the local storage actually. That also makes it a little bit nicer. Okay, so then let's clean up a little bit as the last actions, because overall I'm already very happy and I don't need to style this whole thing on stream with people watching here. So let's clean that up. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this stats to this views, which is equal null, and then we have this, and we have this likes is equal 0. Then we grab local storage views from the local storage. If it's not there, oh, it's actually likes. All right, we have local storage likes. We get them from the local storage. Then we do likes. Let's, or if we do with a single value, then we can actually also do this. Let's just go ternary if this. Oh, I'm getting a little tired here. All right, let's wrap that up. We can get rid of this one. Local storage likes. I'm getting very dirty here right now. So this likes equals local storage likes or 0. Then we can drop this one here. Then we fetch data. If we have a button in there, if this is clicked, then we don't need this one. Then we set item. We do this likes plus plus. Then we place this body here with this likes. And we render everything again. Then we have the call that actually gets the stats. We have the views. Then we can say this views. Then we can destructure these two things from actually this. And if I was not too wild, it should now work. Okay, let's clean up the storage because there's some, the JSON object from before is there. So let's have a look. So we have local storage. We see this. Whoops. So we can delete this. So when we now load our stats counter for the first time, okay, it has 0 likes. When I click it, nice. And when I now do a refresh here, it should have 23, 24. Nice. That's pretty good. All right. Time to wrap up. So what I did over the last 2 hours is that I built a stats counter component which renders automatically. So, and this is without any frameworks, right? This is custom elements in the web, custom elements. So this now has a button that includes a counter which persists over page views. And additionally, I added an attribute for this component, which is currently a local Netlify serverless function. You see here that it makes a request to this function. Here it appends, no, that's not it. Is it this one? It appends a path, and then we have our Airtable database running that counts all these things up. And overall, I'm pretty happy with the results. So very soon, this will then probably go to my own website, into the blog menu. I will style it a little bit so that it looks as fancy as Josh's version here. And maybe we're bringing some labels. So if you want to follow along, and if you want to see or use that by yourself, you can then check this repository, which is Stefan uses stats counter element. I will probably polish the README at some point, but overall, it worked. Nice. Let's give it a final look here. 27, 19. Let's give it another like. 20. I think that's cool. And the thing with this is that now I can publish this to NPM. I can just load a script on my own sites, and I don't have to deal with any JavaScript build pipeline, which I'm always very happy about. So thanks everybody for tuning in and for listening. Let's see, maybe next week I will continue my journey on working on the chat here. What my friend Layla told me is that I definitely have to bring up alerts for people raiding. For example, I learned what a raid on Twitch is, or for people following, so you can follow along. Most likely I'm gonna keep working on the Next.js app next week. But apart from that, thank you everybody for joining. I'm gonna just fire my favorite command here for a moment to say goodbye. And then thanks everybody for watching. Thanks, Niels.